After he saves Termina, Link attempts to return to Hyrule via the sea, but is shipwrecked, and begins the Game Boy adventure, Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening is rumored to be a dream. As it comes to a close, Link regains consciousness in the ocean, and the island has mysteriously disappeared. At the end, he battles a nightmare creature that takes the shape of Ganon. This reveals to him his deepest fear, inevitable future, or both. Link made his way back to Hyrule to discover that Ganon had won the war. Stripped of his equipment after being shipwrecked, Link had to collect his armor and weapons and stop Ganon a second time. This began the original Legend of Zelda for the NES. In Link's absence, the citizens of Hyrule moved north, which explains why the early overworld map didn't have any towns or castles. Ganon had eventually uncovered the Triforce of Power, and Zelda received the Triforce of Wisdom. Fearing Ganon would take her piece of the ancient relic, Zelda broke it into 8 pieces. Link eventually picked them all back up, destroyed Ganon, and became a hero once again. According to its manual, Zelda 2 takes place several seasons after Zelda 1. The sequel introduces Link to the actual Legend of Zelda, a tale many gamers have never heard before. A long time ago, the King of Hyrule's son learned about the Triforce and desired it greatly. An evil wizard informed the prince that his younger sister Zelda knew of its whereabouts. The two confronted Zelda, but when the princess refused to talk, the wizard forced her into a deep sleep. Overcome with power, the wizard died in the process, leaving the prince guilt-stricken over betraying his own blood. He had his sister move to the North Castle altar and declared that every daughter born into the royal family shall be named Zelda. This event predates the Minish Cap, but occurs after the events of King Gustav. This clears up a bit of the confusion gamers feel when they keep encountering characters with the same name. Link learned all of this when he headed north to rediscover Hyrule in Zelda 2. The princess trapped in a deep sleep was none other than the original Zelda, placed there by her brother years before. Link hunted for the Triforce of Courage, prevented the return of Ganon, and pulled this original Princess Zelda from her eternal slumber. Soon after Zelda 2 is the Four Swords adventure, with either a new Link and Zelda, or the same duo that first met during the Ocarina of Time. It's clear the multiplayer journey takes place after the Minish Cap, because it begins with the villainous Vaati trapped within the Pickery Sword. But it definitely took place before A Link to the Past, because once he's revealed as Vaati's puppet master, Ganon acquires the Trident of Power, which he then uses on the Super Nintendo. A Link to the Past speaks of an evil that had been sealed away by the sages, which would lead one to assume that the Super Nintendo quest takes place during Hyrule B, the timeline that began once the sages had sealed the evil, and Zelda had been left behind in a world with a sealed Ganon and no Link. But one could also assume that young Link told the king of his adventure after he traveled back in time. This tale would have ended with Ganon being destroyed, and could have been passed down as a legend and not a historical account, despite Ganon eventually winning the war. In issue 165 of Nintendo Power, Eiichi Onuma, who was the assistant director on Ocarina and directed Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Phantom Hourglass, said, "If you think back to the end of Ocarina of Time, there were 2 endings in that game in different time periods. First, Link defeated Ganon as an adult, and then he actually went back to being a child. You could say that the Wind Waker takes place 100 years after the ending in which Link was an adult. So the story that's retold at the beginning of Wind Waker explains what happened to Zelda and Hyrule after Link disappeared in time. Ganon found a way to escape his prison and still possessed the Triforce of Power. Zelda's descendant, Tetra, still carried the Triforce of Wisdom, but the new Link was forced to rediscover the Triforce of Courage." Let's take a broad look at the picture we're attempting to paint. Minish Cap first, Ocarina second, then the timeline splits. There's Hyrule A, with Link and Zelda as kids warning the king of Ganon's evil plans. And parallel to that, Hyrule B, with a sealed-away Ganon, adult Zelda, and no Link. Hyrule A leads to Majora's Mask, Link's Awakening, Zelda 1, Zelda 2, Four Swords, and then A Link to the Past. Hyrule B leads to Wind Waker. But we're missing 2 games, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. These titles lend themselves to this split timeline theory best of all. They were released on the same day and begin pretty much the same way. Link goes to check on the Triforce via different routes, however. The theory speculates that these games are taking place at the exact same time, just in two different Hyrules. Both games begin with the Triforce in its resting place. The previous games for both timelines have presumably reset the Triforce. Both ages and seasons deal with someone trying to resurrect Ganon. Does this solidify the split timeline theory? We're going to leave that up to you to decide. We're not sure which Game Boy Color adventure takes place in which timeline, but we've speculated that both games occur at the end of each, or at least the end of the story that's been told so far. That was fun, but we also have two brand new Zelda games coming out that could totally shatter this and all other theories. What we do know is that Phantom Hourglass takes place after Wind Waker. As long as the game doesn't resurrect Ganon or disturb the Triforce, it fits in this timeline with no problem, and we can't wait to get our hands on it. The real question is, where does Twilight Princess fit? And will it connect any of these dots? Apparently, it takes place between Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, which would set it in Hyrule B. We have yet to play through the entire game, so plenty of questions still remain. It seems that a strange darkness is trying to consume Hyrule and Zelda. Could this darkness be trying to destroy the princess due to the split she caused by returning Link to his childhood? Or is it just Ganon trying to make his evil return? Will Hyrule ultimately be flooded in the end, giving birth to Wind Waker's Great Sea? The ending of Twilight Princess could dramatically disprove all of these ideas, but we were eager to collect them and assemble our theory of how Hyrule happened, especially after looking back at this groundbreaking franchise. Thanks for joining us on our 6-part retrospective on The Legend of Zelda. We look forward to discussing and debating multiple timelines and dimensions as Nintendo continues one of the greatest fantasy adventures of all time. As long as there's a Triforce, there will be a Zelda. As long as there's a prosperous kingdom, there will be an evil bent on destroying it. And as long as there's an oppressive force threatening Hyrule, there will be a boy in a green tunic, silver shield, and magic blade to stand against it.
I have to say once again, I did not make that. It's on GameTrailers.com. And now obviously Twilight Princess does fit where they put it, for the most part. And it doesn't end in a flood. Personally, I would like to see the game that ends in a flood. I don't know. I think that would be pretty sweet. You know? But, you know, the King of Red Lions did tell us pretty much, I mean, basics on how it happened, but, really, like, well, and then Spirit Tracks is, I'm pretty sure they said 100 years after Phantom Hourglass, which makes a lot of sense with water versus land, although I don't know about planetary, you know, waters receding and stuff like that. I don't know, like, my perfect game, like for the new Wii game that's coming sometime in the future, my perfect scenario for that game is like, you know, they can do whatever they want with the story, you know, in the timeline, but I want to see basically like a combination of Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time in the Twilight Princess engine. Know what I mean? Like have Light World and Dark World kind of thing, but in a Twilight Princess kind of feel. So, I mean, without obviously traveling to, you know, having the Twilight thing there, because it's pretty much like sealed for now. But yeah, I think that'd be really cool.